Welcome everyone. Today we've got a very special occasion. We have the Medio 602 Almost computer. I want to walk you through all the parts that I picked out, explain a little bit about why I chose each part, and then we're going to do some unboxings. So this is the AMD Ryzen 7 3700X. This is great if you want to do any kind of multi-threading. For me, I edit videos. I'm a YouTuber, by the way. To go with that, we've got a Tomahawk B450 Max, and this is a really nice motherboard. I've used it in another build. It's a great little motherboard for the price. Strongly recommend this if you're looking for a B450 chipset. This is the EVGA 650 GQ power supply. Before we go any farther in this, I just want to thank Mrs. Amedio, the lovely lady behind the camera who's helping me out with all this, so I appreciate it. Next up, we have a 2 terabyte solid state drive. Next up, we have our main system memory. This is RAM. This particular RAM is 32 gigabytes. Last, but certainly not least, we have the NVIDIA RTX 2070 graphics card. The 2070 is a step above its little brother, the 2060, with the 2060 Super coming in halfway in between them. All right, now let's unbox some of this stuff, shall we? I'm gonna start with the processor. And right here it is. Hopefully the camera's got good focus on that. That's the processor. The next box is gonna be our Tomahawk B450. This is the motherboard. And this is kind of like the spine. It connects all of your components together. So the way this works is your processor sits inside that little socket right there. The video card, the RTX 2070, is going to sit right there. The RAM goes in here. This little slot right here is for the SSD drive. We're going to plug the case in down here at the bottom. Now we're going to move on to the power supply. You can see here the label is upside down on one side versus the other. That is intentional because sometimes when you mount a power supply in the case, you want the fan pointing down, and sometimes you want the fan to point up. And we've got all sorts of flat cables in here. Again, great for your cable management. We got our shipment, which is this Mustex 907 case. Here you can probably see we've got 3 fans in the front. Those are all RGB fans. Down here is where your power supply is going to sit. Your motherboard goes in there. We've got 1 fan in the back, 2 fans up top, and also at the top you've got some USB ports, power button, reset, audio, all that good stuff. There isn't really much to unbox with an SSD drive. You just get that little chip in there, so I'm just going to kind of leave this off to the side. And same story for the RAM. The 2070 is real nice. This one was only a few dollars more than a 2060 Super, and the 2060 Super, that's a great card too. And in fact, there are some 2060 Supers that are going to rival this in performance. So here's what the card looks like. Top of the card, that's what you're going to see once it's installed in the motherboard there. And this right here is a little accent lighting strip, so that's going to be on. Moving on to the last part, we've got the SteelSeries Apex Pro keyboard, and I'm really excited about this keyboard. For glory, that's what you see when you open the box. Very cool. All right, here is the keyboard. It's got this nice little cover, and ready, set, peekaboo, here it is. By default, this is the level of clickiness that you get. Again, that is individually adjustable per key. Well, that's it for the unboxing portion. So let's build this thing. I have here the case. This is the Mustex 907. I've taken off the side panels and the front. The first thing I like to do is install the power supply. So to do that, that goes in the bottom of this case right here. This is the EVGA 650 GQ. You want this to be on the outside, obviously. That's where you're going to plug in from the wall. So we're going to take it and we're just going to put it in the case like this. Our next step, which is the motherboard, is going to be a lot trickier. Getting the motherboard into the case is 9 screws, so it's more than twice as difficult. All right, so we're going to grab the case, we're going to grab the board. See, that is in there, that is nice and tight. This is a Ryzen 7 3700X. This is for a machine that is kind of a mix between a gaming PC and a workstation for rendering my YouTube videos. And you can see one of those corners is different, and that's how you can tell which way to plug this thing in. And it literally just drops right in there. So you didn't see me pushing on that. You didn't see me moving it around at all. It just literally drops right in. You push down the little lever arm and your processor's installed. And this is probably the scariest part of a PC build, is getting this cooler in place. So the trick with this is you're going to have to use a lot of force, and this is one of the reasons you want your motherboard to be very secure in here. When you begin the installation, you want to take this non-flexible side here, hook that to the bottom of the chip, and then the flexible side hooks over the top of the chip. Then you snap this latch over. It should point at where it says AMD up here, and you have to push down hard. This is the part where it feels like you're going to break your motherboard, and you might if you're not careful. All right. It's hooked in both sides. Now you just flip this to the right, and you're gonna feel a lot of pressure. It's on there. Just to make sure it's on, go ahead and give it a good tug. It should look like you're trying to pull the motherboard off those spacers, and it should not come loose. All right, now we got our SSD in there. Just gonna get that nice and tight. You need a really small screwdriver for this, so you probably see I swapped out for this little guy. Next up, we're going to do the main memory. Consult your motherboard manual for this, but if you've got 4 sticks, obviously you want to plug one into each slot here. If you only have 2, you'll probably want it to be in dual channel configuration, and that's going to be every other slot. And for me, it's going to be this slot here and that slot there. You want to line these up. You have about a 60-40 split on the pins here, and about a 60-40 split here. You don't want to plug it in backward because it's not going to work. And you want to push in each side. So you might have heard that click. That click locking this top side in place, or bottom for you viewing at home. And then click the other side. Then go ahead and just squeeze that in there. Here's our second stick. And I'm not sure I showed the front of this, but that's what it looks like from the front. All right, we have the processor. We have the heatsink. We have solid state drive. We have the RAM. The last guy to install in the case before we start hooking it all up is the graphics card. This is our GeForce RTX 2700 from Asus. On the Wraith Prism cooler, this is an RGB fan. So if you want to be able to control the color of the light, you need to either use the RGB or the USB connector. And really it's based on your system. If your motherboard supports it, I would recommend using USB because it will give you better control over that Prism cooler. So that's what I'm going to do. I would definitely recommend doing this before you put in your graphics card, but we already have it in there, so we're just going to work around it. Just like with regular USB. You try it one way, it doesn't work. You flip it around, still doesn't work. Third time's a charm. With this power supply, which is a semi-modular power supply, I'm going to need CPU power, which is this right here. Here's another CPU cable, so we're going to use both of these. And for this little RGB panel, we need SATA power, which looks like this. So that's SATA serial ATA. All right, so what we've done now is we've gone ahead and connected everything in there. It was way too close quarters to get the camera in there while we were doing it. So in the front, you can see right up here, that's the CPU power on this board. Very important to get this plugged in. You can see that's plugged in and it just wraps right in. The great cable management on this case lets me do that. We need to plug in ATX. We need to plug in the graphics card, and then we can connect all the headers down at the bottom. So this is just going to plug in just like that. Now we've got the video card connector. It's in the back here, and it needs to go right there. And you might ask yourself, why are there 2 connectors here? It's for dual GPU units. I've only got 1 GPU, so I only need to plug in 1. This from the CPU, this is a USB header. You can see we've got 2 right down here. So notice there's 1 pin missing there. On this looks like it's 10 holes, but there are actually only 9. There's a solid spot there. So again, if you're forcing it, you're breaking it. It only plugs in one way. Boom. So that's going to connect our CPU fan. Next, we are going to look at this whole big mess of wires, and we are going to get it all hooked up. Everything down here is going to plug into the bottom part of the motherboard. So what we're going to do is we're going to fish all these wires through kind of one by one. First, over on the far left, we have the audio. All right, so there's our audio plugged in. The next one we have here is this JFP1 right here for the front panel connectors. And that's going to be the hardest one to do because this is not a standardized connection. These you can plug in the wrong way. This part's kind of funny, folks. So if you wire these up wrong, you can actually swap your reset button for your power button. I wouldn't recommend doing that, by the way. But I've seen online people claiming that it could be done, and if it's on the internet, it must be true, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and drop the camera for a second and just get all these plugged in right. All right, now you can see down here at the bottom, we've got our USB 3 connected, USB 2. We went ahead and connected all the front panels. I just went ahead and finished all that while I was in there because it's a whole lot easier to do without a camera. Again, everything only plugs in one way except for these, the front panel switches. You can plug those in incorrectly, so make extra sure those are good. And we are just about ready to plug this guy in and give it a first test. We're gonna double check motherboard's plugged in, the CPU fan, that's very important, is plugged in, our GPU's connected, the RAM feels nice and tight in there. Everything looks good just from a quick inspection standpoint. So I think we're ready to plug this guy in and rock and roll. The only thing plugged into the back, I've got a wireless USB keyboard and mouse right there to control it, on the odd chance that it works the first time. I've got a DisplayPort cable, and I've got a power cable. So I'm gonna hit the power button. Nothing's gonna happen because you need to flip the switch on the back. So I'm gonna flip the switch on the back, and now I'm gonna hit the power button. Oh, it was actually reset that I hit. All right, everything's on. Everything's lit. Let's see what the display does here. So our monitor should pop on. Cool. All right, so came on. You'll get something up here if you're real lucky. If you're not lucky, then you'll have to go through and double check all your cables. This was the first take, folks. I must be getting pretty good at this. I've done about 5 or 6 of these at least. Probably more like 10, but 5 or 6 that I can remember. So we can see up here, this is gonna tell us AMD Ryzen 7 3700X, 8-core processor. That's good, that's what we bought. Over here, this is your multiplier, your bus for your total of 3.6 gigahertz. That's all good. DRAM frequency is 2133. This is PC 3200. What you have to do is you have to go into the BIOS and essentially, quote unquote, overclock it to get to that 3200, but it is rated for that. You can see here DRAM size is 32768 MB. That's 32 gig. That's good. That means it's reading both of the RAM cards, RAM sticks. That's good. And so that's what I've been up to, ladies and gentlemen. I built a PC back in July of last year, and then we moved and then built a new house and then moved once again. So I'm in a totally redesigned studio location, and I'd like to show you guys this whole studio layout once everything gets all put up and in place and finalized here. And if you want to catch that, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on my future content. And as always, thank you very much for watching.